Danish Ambassador Mellbin. Sir, let's circle back a bit and talk more broadly about Philippines and Denmark and Philippines in Europe. There have been some developments, as I understand it, since the last time we talked. I know there were a lot of exploratory things. I think last time we talked, we just saw the visit of President Marcos to Belgium, to visit the European Union representing ASEAN. But what are some of those developments that you have heard and would like to talk about?
Well, I have to say that we're on a roll, so to say, between Denmark and the Philippines, and the amount of investments that are coming to the Philippines is going up a lot, and we have a number of investors who are looking more carefully at the Philippines now.
Okay.
So certainly the Marcos administration has been sending strong signals to the market, and we can see Denmark is responding to that in a positive way, and we're very happy for that. And there was a very large investment announced. So this is a group of investors led by a Danish company then, okay. But not only Danish money, so to say, but a group of investors.
Led by a Danish
company who's the largest sort of investor in renewable energy in the world.
Wow.
Who will invest $5 billion into wind energy sector here in the Philippines.
Wow.
And that's a lot, because the Philippines gets about $10 billion in FDIs every year.
Okay.
So just
$5 billion is just
$5 billion. It's a huge chunk coming in, and in a very important sector, because the country is facing a power crisis.
Sure.
And this is offshore wind farms.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the timeline could be short. It depends a little on the red tape we talked about before. And I have this thing I said to the president, cut the red tape and we'll cut the red ribbons. So hopefully he and I can stand there and look at the inauguration of the first offshore wind farm in the Philippines together.
Oh, is there an area in the Philippines that have been identified? Are you still going to do some wind mapping, or you generally know where these wind farms are going to be?
There are concession areas that have been identified, but I'd like to leave it to the investor to point out, this is where we're going to start the building. And there are also, there's still things that need to be finalized, but the commitment was signed between the company, Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners, and Secretary Lutilia. And it was a great occasion.
And we were talking earlier about Secretary Lutilia. He's traveling to Denmark.
Yes, he is.
And you'll be accompanying him. Can you talk about that trip? What's the purpose of it and what we will see from it?
Yeah, it's a large delegation, broad basis of Filipino government, but also private sector actors who all are interested in the power sector.
Okay.
And there's a large wind power conference called Wind Europe going on in Copenhagen. And they will use that trip to inform themselves more about wind energy, how it can be used, and especially offshore wind, because now the Philippines is going to move heavily into offshore wind. Going to be an important part of your future power profile, and it's simply a good opportunity also to have political level discussions, not just with his Danish counterpart, but there'll be a lot of other ministers there who he can then meet with and talk about these things and how do you manage it. There are also questions like how do you manage the distribution system, what about tariffs, what are the best kind of incentives, all kinds of issues. And I think that it's a great learning opportunity to see, this is what one country has done, but also to hear from the whole industry, because it is actually a global conference, what is happening in the wind sector.
Now, will we see any significant signings or meetings on the sidelines? Besides the things going on in the conference itself?
Well, we hope that some of these meetings will be quite important. But as of now, we don't have any signings planned. We had this very large signing the other day that I talked about before, which is a very large sort of chunk. But there are definitely some very important meetings taking place with people who see a future of both investing and working with renewables here in the Philippines.
Now, you have a background in renewable energy. You were permanent representative to the Renewables Agency. Europe is sort of in an interesting situation now because of what's going on in Ukraine. What are some of the lessons learned there that you think the Philippines should take note of, as we are at the sort of like at the ground floor of this development, right? Moving forward, knowing your experience now, what would be the best way to proceed, from a policy framework standpoint? What would you recommend?
Well, basically I recommend, less dependency on external actors in your energy policies.
Okay.
And your energy supply. The more you can do with Filipino geothermal, Filipino sun, Filipino wind, whatever you can do yourself, Filipino gas, is better.
Okay.
Because being reliant on external sources for your energy is a risk.
Okay.
You also need to diversify your energy production as much as you can, and the Philippines does have some big advantages here, because you can do a lot. You can do onshore, offshore wind, you can do solar, you can do geothermal, you can do biomass, you can do waste to energy, you might be able to do nuclear if SMR technology evolves in a positive way. So you have a lot of options, and combining this will help you build, you can also do hydro, will help you build a very robust system and also deliver cheaper power to your industry and to the people, because unfortunately the Filipinos are paying far too much for their power, their electricity. It's a real problem, and the price needs to come down.
Right. What about financing? And of course, building these things will take resources, right? What are some of the lessons they think the Philippines can learn from Denmark's past and maybe Europeans' past, and how to go about it? There seems to be this mentality about going for public-private partnerships. Is that the right way to go? Because the critics of that would say, we should be looking at our own ways, maybe float our own bonds, or maybe even set up a wealth fund, right, to fund these things. What do you think? I mean, how can we go about it?
I think whatever you can finance yourself, you should reserve for those things that private equity will not finance.
I see.
Because the lack of infrastructure and the need to provide more robust infrastructure and better infrastructure is huge in this country.
Okay.
You need bridges, you need roads, you need metro, you need harbors, you need airports, you need power plants. You just need a lot. So I think the smart strategy for your country is get foreign investors or domestic investors to come up with private equity and put in where it's possible, where it's fiscally viable, and reserve the government's own money and possibly potentially a sovereign wealth fund for those investments that either are not attractive for the private sector, or where the payback time is so long, we're talking past 30 years, where it's not really viable to go with private investors. So you reserve that capital for that. And if you look, I use this, this comparison. If you build one more kilometer of high-speed railway in China, it will not boost Chinese economy, because they build a crazy amount of infrastructure.
Thousands of miles,
But you build 1 kilometer of metro in this country, the payback is tremendous. I mean, it's a great investment for your future. So, the former government had the slogan, build, 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 and now it's build more, better. I think these are good slogans, because it will really help raise the standard of living. It will make life for ordinary Filipinos easier. It will make the country richer in the long run.
Right. Now, just one more question on the renewables, because some of the critics say that the alternatives or the clean energy is not exactly carbon free, right? That there is a carbon footprint to even building the windmills, right? Is there a better way? Is that a valid argument? Is there a better way to go about it? Knowing, because the argument there, if you point that out, is that you don't want to have one race to perdition and then switch it over to another one, that also has cost, right? Are there any lessons learned there from from your country, you think?
I've heard this argument, but I think it misses the point, because
Okay.
of course there's a carbon footprint. I mean,
Sure.
you and I sitting here breathing
There's
has a
carbon
carbon footprint, so you
Yeah.
know, it's part of human existence.
Yeah.
And it's also part of the existence of a windmill or
Yeah.
a solar panel or whatever. What you need to do is to calculate what is the payback time of that carbon footprint.
Right.
And for a modern windmill, the new ones, it's about 3 to 4 months.
Okay.
3 to 4 months. So after 3 to 4 months, the clean energy it's producing has already compensated for the carbon footprint that went into, you know, the construction of the mill and everything. So these windmills, they typically have a lifespan of at least 15 years, typically more than that, but at least 15 years. So if you're talking about those kind of timelines and you're talking a few months to pay back the carbon footprint, no, it's a good equation.
It's worth it. Yeah.
It's worth it.
Are there other technologies from Denmark that you think would be good here? Because you mentioned there are so many things that, you know, there's solar, there's biomass, there's a number of, you know, geothermal. Are there Danish technologies or Danish industries you think would be, be interested in serving a market like the Philippines, where the energy cost is very
Definitely.
high?
We see a lot of potential in several areas. So we have Danish companies that are interested in the wind sector, as I mentioned before, solar, biomass, waste to energy. These are all things people are interested in, or even hydro. But maybe most interesting, we also have some SMR technology, small modular reactors, nuclear. This is emerging technology. You know, nobody can sell you an SMR right now,
Right.
but there are people working on this. And in Denmark, we have a company that has a model that would be highly applicable to the Philippines. So I think it's very promising, and it's probably the first SMR technology that will be commercially available.
Wow.
And we're talking about several years before other SMRs will be commercially available. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this develops. I know it's part of Secretary Lutilia's program and the delegation's program to also learn a little more about this technology. This could be an interesting option, and you know, there is sometimes this debate, nuclear versus renewables.
Right.
But as I said before, we shouldn't look at it as, you know,
As
just one
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
We need a range of technologies to work together, because
Right.
then we have a more robust and resilient energy system.
Right.
And you could easily combine SMRs with an extension of renewables. So, you know, what the Filipino need is reliable, cheap, and abundant power.
Right, and less red tape.
And that comes with less red tape.
All right, we'll take another quick break. This is Business and Politics. We're talking to Ambassador Mellbin.